to Hearing Things with Julie and Brad. We are ecstatic to be joined by Fran Roznowski today. Fran is a very multi-talented, multifaceted person and does one of my favorite things, which is dancing. And she's going to tell us all about her journey with hearing loss and what that means to her with regards to dancing and experiencing music and kind of living artistically in the midst of an unexpected hearing loss. Am I correct, Fran, in that? That
You
your
got it.
hearing was quite
Absolutely.
unexpected. So if you could tell us a little bit
Mm.
about your hearing loss history, but prior to that, let us know your preferred terms. So for example, I use hearing impaired and Brad uses hard of hearing. And we always
Right.
like to kind of label for folks that everyone has their own specific preferred identity term when it comes to
hmm
their loss. So if you could let us know your preferred term and then tell us a little bit about your hearing loss history, that would be great.
Okay, so I tell people that I have a hearing loss and a cochlear implant that doesn't work very well. So I've had a CI for 6 years now. Um, and I want to give a little bit about who I am, right? Because I'm not only a person with the hearing loss, I live in Chelsea,
Ooh.
Mass now, originally from Albany, New York, and I live with single parents and their children. So currently there are 7 of us at home. I've been a Spanish speaker since I was about 20 years old, and I have extended family in Argentina, and I visit them every 2 to 3 years. Always have worked with young kids, ages 3 to 6, and sometimes in bilingual childcare. And before I retired in 2023, I was an early childhood specialist in the Cambridge School Department in a program that was affiliated with them. And I worked in as many as 40 childcare centers. And it was always to support children with challenging behaviors
Mhm.
or special needs, their teachers, and their parents. I have a master's degree in bilingual special education, doctorate in early childhood education with a focus on the role of teachers when children at a very young age have trauma in their lives. In retirement, I spend time with LUCE, which is a statewide immigrant support network, and I'm a verifier of the actions of immigration agents here in Chelsea, in our
Oh,
neighborhoods, in our courthouse. And I also continue to work on lead poisoning awareness in our city
great.
because we have a high number
Fantastic.
of children with
Sure.
lead.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's just a little bit about me. Sort of my hearing loss. I am the daughter of a woman who wore hearing aids when she was probably in her 70s, but my grandmother was always in with hearing aids. And so I never knew her without them. And,
Yeah.
I remember once a friend of mine said, "You're so good with your grandmother."
Oh,
And I kind of stepped back and I really didn't quite understand what she meant. And I think some of it is if you grow up with people who are hard of hearing,
mhm.
you just relate the way that you relate. And, it's nothing that is outstanding, right?
Sure.
That this
Yeah.
is just who we are. So when I was about 47, uh, I was in a classroom and I actually had one very specific experience. I often introduced myself to kids. Hi, my name is Fran. What's your name? And the child said, "My name is Shakira." And so I said, "Hi, Shakira." She said, "No, no, no, that's not my name." And she
Ooh.
repeated it several times, and I just could not
Oh.
understand. So, for those of you who are about my age, it will not surprise you that my first audiology hearing test was at Sears. Sears
Oh,
all
department
right.
store. There you go. There you go. There's the recognition, right? Right, right, right. Um, and so I went there
right.
and they said, no, your hearing is fine. You don't need it. I went back because I continued to have difficulty observing children. I needed to hear what they were saying
Yeah.
when they were talking to me. And again, it's always a high-pitched voice, and that's
Mm-hmm.
typical for this age group. And so I then went to a hearing technician and he also said, "You don't need hearing aids." And I actually insisted. I said,
Yeah.
"I do need hearing aids for my job."
Yeah.
And
Sure.
so I was fitted with Simmons.
Oh, yeah.
And sort of fast forward, in 2018, his practice closed very, very suddenly. It closed so abruptly that I couldn't get my records. So I
Oh.
ended up going to a local audiologist um, in a small practice, And because they worked with Widex, at that time I was wearing Widex hearing aids. And so I did not go to Mass Eye and Ear because
Hmm.
they did not deal with those
Right.
devices.
Right.
Um, and so at that point, my hearing aid was probably only 15% in my
Hmm.
right ear and 80% in my left ear.
Interesting.
And so that audiologist said, I think that you should consider having a cochlear implant. So I went to Mass Eye and Ear. Um, and during that very first consult, they never mentioned what hearing would sound like with a
Oh
Oh,
processor.
no.
They never, ever, ever talked about how music could be impacted or affected by
wow.
that, right? Um, and so in 2019, I was implanted with a NAIDA, which is an
Okay.
advanced bionics processor,
Sure.
and with a phonak hearing aid. So right ear had the processor, left ear had the ears. And a month after I was implanted, and before the processor was activated, I woke up with tinnitus
Oh,
and
Oh no.
the sound of 10,000 cicadas. I
oh,
ended up going to Dr. Grunfest, who's actually over at Mass Eye and Ear, and he is a specialist in tinnitus. And I'll never forget at the appointment, he on his computer he was able to find the sound. It's like, yes, yes,
huh.
that's it. That is exactly what I'm hearing. So I backtracked, called the surgeon's office, and based on what I said, they said, yep, indeed, you do have sinus. And sort of what was crazy about that was I got a pre-op information sheet, and it
Yeah.
said, be aware you could have tinnitus immediately following the surgery, just for a couple of weeks. So
Okay.
here I was a month out. I was not even activated yet, and I had it. So I ended up going a few days later for the scheduled activation at Mass Eye and Ear, but the audiologist could not program the CI for high frequencies. So they did a CAT scan immediately, and it was found that I had an electrode protruding from my cochlea. So I received within 3 weeks a second implant.
Oh my God.
So the tinnitus continues 6 years out. Um, but I will say that the processor masks the tinnitus.
Okay.
So I'm only irritated by the sound of 10,000 cicadas when it's off, which means when I swim, when I
Yeah.
shower, and when I go to bed at night. Uh, but my sleeping was disrupted because of that. I used to be able to sleep very easily, and to this day, there are certain techniques I have to use just to drop off to sleep. But what I also noticed, and I'm sure people in the listening audience, this will be familiar, that as soon as a cochlear implant was activated, I noticed that all types of music sounded extremely distorted.
Yeah.
And there was a
Yeah.
constant snare drum sound within the processor. So if I took it off, I would hear tinnitus. If I put it on,
Oh.
snare drum sound. So rock bands and orchestras
Hmm.
were most annoying because of multiple instruments.
Sure.
Yeah.
Um, when I was driving, I would listen to the news broadcast, and as soon as music came on, I had to turn it off because it was just so unsettling for me.
Wow.
Um, so I started to decline invitations to plays, to
Sure.
conferences, because they were horrible listening experiences. I couldn't understand the dialogue. I couldn't understand the musical lyrics. And that's even if I was sitting in the front row with headphones on that were
Right.
issued by the theater. Um, so a few months after being implanted, it was recommended by my audiologist to do the Advanced Bionics online musical experience. And I'm a kind of curious person. So it's like, all
Mhm.
right, let's try it with the hearing aid on, the hearing aid off, the
Sure.
headphones on.
Interesting.
And during one activity, I realized that I was completely deaf in my right ear because I had taken off the processor.
Hmm.
And I never, never, never expected that. I knew that there was going to
Sure.
be decline in my hearing,
Yeah.
but I never, ever thought that I would be completely deaf in
Mhm.
that
Hmm.
ear. So what was my reaction? I cried.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
Um, so another audiologist, seeing my distress, she suggested that I contact Jeff Plant, who is a hearing specialist, and he is the founder of the Hearing Rehabilitation Foundation. In our initial phone call, and this was during COVID,
Uh-huh.
he said he described his work with cochlear implant recipients who want to regain their enjoyment of music. He ended the conversation with, "You won't hear music as you remember it, but it will be pleasant." And
Oh,
it's like,
Oh,
I'm down.
wow.
So when we started meeting in person, he wanted to know what my favorite songs were from when I was a teenager and as a young adult, because I had perfect hearing at that point, right?
Yeah.
And in my memory was what a wonderful experience that was. So he created a custom CD with
oh,
songs that would move me into a path of musical listening pleasure. And I was noting progress. So within 18 months, we met every 2 weeks. Um, we were both able to see that I was able to shift my rating of songs. So I would listen to a song and
Right.
I would rate it. And they went from horrible and very bad to acceptable. And I would say nowadays, there are probably about 8 songs that I can rank is very, very good.
oh, good.
And also based on what Jeff was doing, my speech recognition has also improved significantly. And
Phenomenal.
I want to share with the audience one of the activities he
Yeah.
did is he had written a book, wrote a novel, and he would read passages. So he would say a sentence
Mhm.
and I would repeat it, but then he would cover his mouth, right? He had something so
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't see. So for those of us who are lip reading and aren't even aware of it,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
and that's where I think we noticed the real increase in speech recognition because I was only hearing,
Okay.
I didn't
Yeah.
have any kind of visual cues. So I did wear the processor and hearing aid in the classrooms from 2020 when I got the second implant to 2023, which is when I retired. But I'm honest, those classroom meetings at nap time with music to lull those children to sleep, we
Mhm.
have to whisper, and then there's either an AC or heating unit. I just couldn't hear.
Yeah.
Um, and so that, I mean, I asked myself, did I retire a little bit early because of how frustrating that was? I was not doing my job as well as I could
Sure.
have, should have had done in the past. And I would say perhaps. Um, so in 2023, I was referred by my audiologist to a music therapy pilot project
Mhm.
that they had at Mass Eye and Ear uh, with a woman named Perry Strongwater. And the program consisted of 8 sessions, and my goal was to be able to listen to music in general without feeling distressed. And we actually got an extension to do a full total of 15 visits. And what I learned through that was that I have strong rhythm abilities and excellent ability to match pitch.
Huh. So cool.
So during the time I was working with Perry Strongwater and Jeff, we sang a lot in all of the sessions. And I
Yeah.
realized I really miss singing because if you're familiar with early childhood settings,
Yep.
you're singing all the time with kids.
Yeah.
And as a retired person, I wasn't doing that. And so I joined a chorus. I joined the Poor People's Campaign chorus in early 2025. And
Huh.
now I do solos and I lead songs in Spanish.
Huh.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Huh.
yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
is
That's
phenomenal.
yeah,
fantastic to
yeah,
think
yeah,
that the loss of your auditory channel has led you to having incredible pitch and being able to sing.
Well, I might have already had that.
Amazing.
I might
Right.
have always
Sure.
had the picture, but who would have ever recognized
You
it,
never
right?
knew, right?
I had no idea. And so that was actually really good to
That's
Yeah.
hear.
really cool.
Um, so as I had mentioned, tinnitus is chronic, though it's masked. So in 2025, I had an appointment at the newly founded or newly created tinnitus clinic at Mass Eye and Ear
Hmm.
with a doctor who's researching the regeneration of auditory nerve fibers in mice. And it is showing
Interesting.
promising results.
Oh, I like that.
His next step is to expand the study to humans with tinnitus and normal hearing. And then the following
Yeah.
phase will be with persons like myself who have tinnitus and hearing loss. So I've already signed up. When I mentioned it's like I want to be a potential research participant. And I really, really hope that this advancement is what I've been waiting for.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. I actually have tinnitus myself. I have like four different sounds going on between the two different ears. And
Uh-huh.
I tried something called the Lanier, and so it's
Yeah.
a neuromodulator device,
Yep.
and it was able to help a little bit, but I'm
Uh-huh.
so encouraged to hear about the regeneration of the hair cells because that's the issue, right? Is
Right.
the hair cells you don't
That's
have,
exact
your brain
right.
thinks it's missing something, so it's filling in those gaps and saying you can't hear this, but no, you can, and it's
Right.
giving it to you, but
We're
it
giving
can't
you
shut
something
off.
else to hear. That's right.
Yeah, it's so annoying
Absolutely.
because there's no such thing as silence with tinnitus, even if you're deaf. I
That's
have anxiety because of it as well. So when I take my hearing
hmm
aids out, it
hmm
gets louder,
Yeah.
and obviously just
hmm
talking about it, it gets louder, doesn't it?
Really?
Because you pay
Well,
attention to it.
and I started when I found out that I had it. I started talking to everyone that I knew, and it's like, oh, I've got tinnitus. And I can't tell you the number of cases where people would say, well, I've got it too. When I was in college, somebody threw a cherry bomb in the men's bathroom in the next to mine, and I've had it ever since. So I want to say like eight people that I knew and knew well, but was crazy. Their spouses said, we didn't know you had tinnitus. And what they said is exactly what you said. They said,
Mhm.
they only think about it and hear it when there's association, when
Yeah,
Yeah.
someone talks about it. Mine is chronic. I just
yeah,
hear it
same.
Sure.
constantly.
Yeah,
So I think there's a little bit of hope there. But then there was another pilot project, also from the Titness Clinic with a psychologist. He was newly hired, guy named Dr. Ethan Lester. So we met for 6 sessions, and I had two epiphanies. So the first one was, unlike eyeglasses, which I think are perfect, this prescriptions where you get a new prescription and they're actually perfect. And actually, for me, bilateral hearing aids were perfect. I heard better. I would say that is not the case for me with the
Mhm.
cochlear implant. They
right.
are far from perfect for me. And number two was I miss dancing. It used to be one of my favorite activities before the cochlear implant, and I'm um a party dancer, right? I just do it for enjoyment. But the problem was, although I can tap out a rhythm, I can
Mhm.
sway my head to music, I can't feel the music.
Hmm.
So something happens between this movement and wanting to move my body. Um, and so what I ended up doing as a result of that was I said, I'm going to go look for a class. And so nothing existed. So last year, I initiated an advisory board comprised of Jeff Plant,
Yeah.
Perry Strongwater, um, and Gwen Townsend, who is a seasoned dance instructor, to create Reclaim the Groove. And it is a dance class specifically for people with hearing loss or cochlear implants. So in the fall of 2025, 8, 9 months ago, we had our first series of dance classes. And what was so helpful for me is that Jeff and Perry recommended music that could be easily heard
Mhm.
by people
Hmm.
with hearing loss. And so now we're planning other events. I sort of want to end sort of my journey about with hearing loss with a declaration that might come as a surprise to you and the listening audience is the only regret that I've had so far in my life is getting the cochlear implant.
Sure.
I believe that for the classroom use, we could have just used microphones that were Bluetooth to my Wittix hearing aids. So I asked the audiologist, and she said, we don't deal with Wittix hearing aids. And my reaction was, that's unethical. You could have sent me up to the Leahy Clinic. I
Interesting.
could have gone elsewhere, right?
Right.
Um, it is what it is, but I think I also understand and believe that everyone's experience with cochlear implants in general, but you guys are probably right, with hearing loss is very unique. Um, so that's my spiel about
Wonderful.
uh, where I have been and where I've been
Sure.
and where I am now.
That's
That's a
I
heck of a journey, and I think that you're absolutely right. Everyone's hearing loss. We talk about this all the time. It's so personal,
yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
so, like cochlear implants, uh, work sort of well for you. So this is a great story to hear. So thank you so much for
Mhm.
sharing because these are
Mhm.
concerns that people need to be made aware of, and that's what
Absolutely.
we're trying
Mhm.
to do with the show, right? Is to
Mhm.
try to get the conversations going. And so different people have different takes on it, and we just want to
Mhm.
show as many stories as we can.
And I think there's an unfortunate misconception that, oh, your hearing aids don't work for you anymore. Okay, well, just get a
Yeah.
CI. That's not what that is,
No.
you know. So this is actually as painful as your story was
Yeah.
to hear. It's very important for people to get those multiple perspectives
Mhm.
of this isn't the
Mhm.
same thing. It's not just a logical next step for everyone necessarily.
Yeah.
No,
Mhm.
this is incredibly informative. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's shift to music a little bit here. So
Mhm.
it's a little fun question, I hope, anyway. So what is your favorite style of dance to do, to watch?
So I used to really enjoy dancing to funk and soul.
Oh,
You know, we're
okay.
talking Tina Turner, we're talking Diana Ross, we're talking Earth, Wind, and Fire, and watching salsa. I love watching salsa.
Yep.
Just
Uh-huh.
the turns, the moves, the syncopation, lots and lots of fun.
Yep.
It's fantastic. Put your glasses on.
I know I can't say anything. So as
Yeah.
you're dancing for enjoyment now, have you had to put any accommodations in place for yourself to be able to hear and feel the music? Any modifications to your practice? What advice would you have for people with
Yeah,
hearing loss?
so what I would say is to be familiar with the music.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to go to a party or you're having a party, do a playlist of stuff that you like to do. So
Okay.
whether it's a song, whether it's acoustic. But the
Mm-hmm.
other thing that I've learned from other people, and I haven't done it yet because I really don't, I'm boycotting concerts, I boycott musicals because of where my hearing is
Yeah.
now,
Sure.
um, is that I've met a couple of CI users, and what they do is they download the playlist of a concert beforehand because they say that the playlist is available and they then listen to it repeatedly so they know what to
Perfect.
expect. Now
Perfect.
you're shaking your head. Is that what you do,
That's
Julie?
exactly what I do before every concert, musical, opera, anything I'm going to. I do
Yeah.
that exact thing. I learn the entire music, all the lyrics,
Hmm.
everything ahead of time, so
Yeah.
I can go and relax and enjoy instead of
Hmm.
going and stressing and straining
Mhm.
and, being
Hmm.
unsure of what's happening. But that's
So
really
what?
cool because you're right. You're almost doing your own oral rehab, learning that
Hmm.
music before you go. That's great.
Yeah. And I think that's what Jeff did when he said,
Mhm.
"What was your favorite music
Hmm.
as a teenager?" Because music, I think, is you really start listening to music, right? When you're an
Sure.
adolescent, and it
Mhm.
becomes much more important to you. And so I think that that's why it's part of or rehab. The other thing that I also do is I stand as close to the source of music as I
Okay.
possibly can, whether it's
Hmm.
live, whether it's broadcasted, um, because
That's
that's what
great.
helps me. So,
Very
Julie, I'm
cool.
just curious, what does music sound like? If you go, you talked about opera, you talk about musicals.
Sure. So I don't know. I've had hearing loss since I was 3.5, first diagnosed at 3.5. I've had bilateral hearing aids since the age of 4. So I've never heard organically.
Hmm.
So for me, music sounds the way it
Yeah.
sounds. I don't really have a comparison point.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have noticed as I've gotten older, I've lost almost all of the high frequencies now. And I was a flautist and a piccolo player for a long time. So that's
Hmm.
gone. And I'm still able to still, if I'm at, like the symphony or something, I can pick out instruments still in the lower ranges. I can still identify that. But that pre-prep, especially if it's something unfamiliar, is
Hmm.
critical. I can't just go
Hmm.
in cold anymore and enjoy something. I
Hmm.
have to really learn every single bit.
Hmm.
So hard to say what it sounds like for me because I've only ever heard it artificially.
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, mine is just turn off that snare drum sound, would you?
Sure, sure.
Um, and we're still working. It hasn't that it has not happened.
It's work in progress.
Can I ask you though, because
That's
you
me.
have had
Yeah.
typical hearing and then got hearing aids at the age of 23.
Yeah.
Does music sound different to you at all?
100%. Yeah. So like it sounds thinner with hearing aids. It sounds
Oh,
more artificial
interesting.
with hearing aids. So I still have
Mm,
enough of my hearing that if I'm running out of work and it's raining, I don't want to have my hearing aids in.
Mhm.
So I'll put them in a case and go in the car. And then when I get in the car, I don't always take them in depending on how wet I am. And sometimes I'll leave them out and I'll turn on the radio and I'll have to turn it up fairly loud. But
yeah.
it's such a fuller, richer
Huh.
experience with the biological ears. But the problem is
Wow.
I have to turn it up so loud that no speaker is going to survive me listening to a whole song with my
Hmm.
biological ears. But
Hmm.
I
Interesting.
do have I was fortunate enough to I've had hearing loss my whole life. I failed my first hearing test at 5, but I didn't get my
Hmm.
first set of hearing aids until 23. And
Hmm.
so like I found my I found my audiogram from when I was 5,
Yeah.
and I
Huh.
did damage to myself by not getting hearing aids when I needed them because it is genetic, so it's on my father's side. So it
Hmm.
was only a matter of time, but I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready because conversations like we're having here didn't happen 40 years ago. And
Hmm.
so I lost a lot. I lost like 40 decibels in my low tones because I didn't listen to my mom and I turned
Hmm.
up my Walkman too loud. And so
Oh.
I could see if I go through my audiograms over the years, I can see the low tones
Hmm.
just dropping.
Hmm.
And so I do, so I can see I can hear the difference between my hearing aids and my biological ears, but like
Hmm.
I
Wow.
can't hear it. The technology isn't strong enough to have a level of enjoyment
Hmm.
without my hearing aids.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
there is a tinniness and artificialness to it with the hearing aids, but you adjust, right? You adjust to whatever your situation is, and you learn to come to terms with it. And I get a lot of enjoyment from music. I can't imagine not having music. So yeah,
The only other thing I can kind of compare it to answer Fran's question from my own
yeah.
experiences is when I shifted from the analog hearing aid
Hmm.
technology to the digital, when the digital came out. And I
Okay.
remember noticing a huge difference to the point that I got tears in my eyes because I went to
Mm.
see my brother in a concert. He was playing Love Supreme and he was
Oh,
on drums. And I
great.
could pick out shows every bit of his drum playing that I couldn't have done
Ah.
before
Hmm.
with
So
the
sweet.
digital. And I
Hmm.
remember just sitting in the audience and I'm like, God, this
Uh-huh.
sounds so
Yeah.
different. But even that difference is
Yeah.
nowhere near
No.
what it would be like to hear that same piece of music
Right.
organically. So
$100.
it's
Hmm.
very
Challenging.
multifaceted for all of us for sure.
You know what it reminds me of, Julie, is if you've ever seen the YouTube videos of a baby or a
Yeah.
toddler getting the CI,
Yeah.
and mommy comes here and it's
The
like
parents.
the child's eyes and the parent's
Yeah,
reaction.
Yeah.
So those things can certainly still happen, right? No
sure.
matter what
Oh, for
your
sure.
age is, right?
Oh,
When you
for
hear
sure.
things a little bit differently.
For sure.
All right. So what the best piece of advice you would give to someone recently diagnosed with hearing loss?
I think that finding somebody with a similar hearing loss
Oh,
who's
great idea.
adapted successfully.
Hmm.
I think just talking to them, and I think a good way to start is through in-person events like HLAA.
Hmm.
I know that Advanced Bionics had a couple of events before I got implanted. And so I met that first one. It was in October. I was implanted in November of 2019. There were 38 people there. And they said it was the
Wow.
best thing they've ever done. They were parents of children.
Sure.
They were the people themselves, a variety of ages. So that's why I kind of went in gung ho. And I didn't know to ask. I do now.
Sure.
What is music like for you?
Sure.
Mhm.
Because it just wasn't,
Sure.
when you're talking about like 40 years ago or, many
Yeah.
years ago, the shift from analog to digital, there are things that you just don't know to ask. I would also say you might have an audiologist who could recommend a support group
Hmm.
or an individual who might be a mentor to you. Um, but for me, I think, and I'd like to know your opinion, is it important to have someone who has a similar kind of hearing aid, who maybe was around the same age within a 10-year span of when they started to lose their hearing, or just a person in general? What do you think?
I'm laughing because our story kind of lends itself to this. I'm
Mhm.
the only person in my very big family with hearing loss across generations. They don't know
Hmm.
where my hearing loss came from. I have no one to relate to. And until we bumped into each other at a barbecue 2 years ago, I had no friends with hearing loss. I wasn't involved in the HLAA community, hearing loss community. So for me, if you asked me this 2 years ago, I would have
Hmm.
said, figure it out, you're fine. Like I
Ah.
needed that connection just because it was never
Yeah.
available I
Hmm.
grew up in such an artist world, I guess. And you come from a family with um,
Here.
genetic hearing loss, but it's everyone handled it a little bit differently.
Mhm.
But you didn't have any friends or
No,
anyone
I
with
didn't. It's
hearing
like
loss either, right? Like
no,
it was
like
sharing like that.
I don't remember my father without hearing aids, but we didn't talk about it. The stigma
Hmm.
was just too great,
Yeah.
and so we didn't talk about it. So I think just having Julie, having somebody to talk about hearing loss and to
Hmm.
empathize, right? That's so big. You can't
That's
substitute
huge.
that because we face the same struggles, but we face them differently.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
I can see where you're coming from, friend. I think that it would be another level to like meet someone with the same kind of hearing loss because unlike Julie, I have my high frequencies still. So I have a
Mm,
reverse slope hearing loss. So
mhm,
midtones and low tones are where I can't hear, and I can hear pretty well at the high tones even without my hearing aids. And
Mhm.
she has none. And so we have different hearing loss struggles. And so I think that I don't think hearing loss is talked about enough, that
Right.
it's
mm,
just enough to have somebody sharing the struggle with right
mhm,
now.
mhm,
But I
mhm,
love what you're saying is like find somebody with your type of hearing loss because I want to get to that point where that matters. It's not
Sure.
just enough to meet someone with hearing loss.
Mhm.
You need to
mhm,
get a little more individualized. You need to have someone
mhm,
Mhm.
who understands what it's like to not have any high tones because I'll never
mhm,
I won't understand that right now. So
mhm,
that's a great.
mhm,
I didn't even think about that because I haven't been talking about my hearing loss long enough, so I didn't even get
mhm,
to that level. So that's a
mhm.
great point.
And I didn't meet anybody until I was 49, so I have no idea. I have nobody in my life with hearing loss before he dropped in 2 years ago.
Yeah,
Mhm.
So yeah.
great point.
Yeah, and I would say socially, I grew up with people with hearing loss, and I think with my grandmother, it was just that's the way that it was.
Yeah.
Sure.
And her hearing loss was very unique, as we said often are. As a kid, she grew up in the country, Syracuse, New York, a
Mhm.
lot of kids.
Yeah.
She had a lot chronic ear infections, and she would took a rat-haired comb and poke it to
Oh.
stop the irritation, and so she burst her eardrum.
Oh.
And so there was just that sense, I think, of it was just normal. She just always
Sure.
had hearing aids. And,
Sure.
my mother was a nurse, and we sort of just understood that when people are in their 60s and 70s,
Uh,
it's kind of likely that you may have a hearing aid. But I don't know of anyone
Hmm.
who has the hearing loss. Um, yeah. So
Right.
it is what it is. But I think lesson learned is I would, certainly say that's a good thing to strive for.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sure. Wow. All right.
Last question.
I can't see. Can't hear. Now I can't see. So before we wrap, we know that you're a dancer, as am I. If you had to pick one song recommendation for the ultimate dance song, what always
Yep.
gets you out on the dance floor no matter what?
You ready?
I'm
Let's
ready.
do
It
it.
might be
Diana
the same
Ross's
song.
I'm Coming Out.
Oh,
Solid choice.
brilliant.
Solid choice.
Brilliant choice.
Brilliant.
That's awesome.
But thank
Why?
you for the
Okay, go ahead.
questions ahead of time,
Yeah.
because if it was like on the spot, I might not be able to come up with it, but I was able to think it through.
Good.
So,
Yeah.
So
Julie, what's your favorite?
September by Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Oh, okay. That's a very big popular karaoke hit. I was
It
actually at a
is.
karaoke bar
Yep.
down in Quincy for somebody's birthday this weekend, and
And
it
knocked it
was
out.
played. There you go. I
Big
knocked it out
fan.
of the park.
How about you, non-dancer?
Yeah, I don't dance too much, but
Doesn't dance
if
ever.
I had to, I have to go with "You Shook Me All Night Long" by AC/DC.
Great.
So there we
That's a
go.
wonderful note to end on, right? We're all
Yes, I
It
think
really
smiling and
so.
is.
laughing at our favorite dance
Yeah,
tunes.
Absolutely.
love it. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
So, Fran, this was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you so, so
yeah,
much. Your story was so multifaceted and
powerful.
painful and powerful and vulnerable. And I'm just so happy that good has come from it, from
Yeah,
what you've shared about
Mhm.
your collaborations with Jeff Plant and
Yeah.
Harry and Gwen. And I look forward to hearing more about that work and hopefully participating in an upcoming workshop dance opportunity with you one of these days with that group, hopefully soon. And thank you so much. This was awesome.
And I'm going to
This was
thank you not
awesome.
only for tonight's opportunity, but I've gone and looked at some of the podcasts that
Yeah.
you've done, and
Oh,
they are hysterical.
oh,
Oh, thank
good.
you.
Thank
I am
you.
loving them.
Good. Thank you
So
so
I'm
much.
going to become a frequent viewer. So thank you
Oh,
very, very much.
good.
Thank you so much. All right, so we're gonna wrap up.
Yeah. All right. So,
Okay.
yeah, thanks so much. And I'm sure we'll be in touch. It's a small community.
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
is for sure. All
All
Okay.
right.
right. All
Take
right. Take care,
care.
Bye-bye.
friends. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.